A glance in the mirror. Chapter 50. Electing to return home. Towards the end of 1990, Josephine was spending more time in the UK, servicing her existing client bank, giving many retirement talks to both British Telecom and Reed's International Paper Group. She was accompanied by Keith Allen, who fell under a spell as they travelled the countryside together. These pre-retirement talks provided more clients that needed servicing. A return to England became an obvious move rather than continually flying backwards and forwards. Josephine had re-established a working relationship with Hill Samuel, being invited back with special agreement which provided no gap in her length of employment, and this would allow her pension and possible buyout was based on her now continuous employment record. She left Hassan's solicitor's practice mainly because they never really supported her position. This should not have surprised them. They had contacted a number of solicitors, both in Spain and in England, to extend their interests in financial services, using their existing client banks as an introduction to offer a personal and private service. These offers had not been taken up. The conclusion they formed was that solicitors didn't want to lose power over their clients, nor take any supposed risks. Back in England, Helen had finished her drama course, obtaining her certificate. The first task for her was to have a studio photograph taken so that she could send it round to prospective auditioning agencies. She attended many auditions, meanwhile having singing lessons to be able to offer a complete set of skills for musicals and plays. A demonstration tape was made by Anthony to accompany the photograph. Both were well made and presented a good introduction. To earn money, she took on a position with the local cinema, flexible in their hours, understanding her reasons for having to be available for auditions at a moment's notice. And from that time she followed Christmas work during the pantomime season, which gave her experience and the necessary equity card. Ever since attending arts educational school in Tring, she had carried the banner for a lifetime in the theatre. She lived and breathed acting and singing, practicing daily. There was never a more dedicated exponent or interested follower in the latest film, play or musical, able to sing along with their score and recite the lines, dreaming of that moment when a call was to be made. In the summer of 1990, Terry considered Anna's future. The following year was to be her last at school. She was finishing her baccalaureate. He discussed all the options with her, giving full exposure to all the pitfalls and pluses. She had the chance to go to finishing school in Switzerland if she so wished, or attend a Sotheby course dealing with antiques, their purchase, restoration, storage, archival and auctioneering. However, she made it very clear her goal was a British university rather than Spanish. When asked, she opted to study history of art and Spanish as a honours degree. Anna was adamant about returning to England. She had experienced enough of Spain and the macho society and didn't like it. There was no way her natural inclinations could be swayed. Not that Terry ever tried. He was full agreement with her decision and her choice of subjects. He assured her that if she wanted to return to England, then he would too, and they would both present a strong front to Josephine. They consulted the Vanes by phone, who suggested that Cambridge University might be possibility, and that they would look into it and let us know what they had come up with. Meanwhile, Anna wrote away to every university that had an honours degree course in Spanish and history of art, the two subjects Anna felt both were her strongest suit. Anna chose from the list Bristol, Bath and University College London, where Rebecca was also going to read history. Beryl Vane phoned to say that she had been in touch with Cambridge University and arranged an interview with a college that taught those subjects, saying that she had paid the way and would we let her know what Anna had decided. We phoned back telling her that the arrangements were fine and that we would be delighted to accept her invitation to lunch to see them and talk over the matter. Both Anna and Terry went back to England in late 1990, staying at Munt's Cottage, Aylesbury, whilst Josephine looked after Ruff in Spain. Anna had an appointment with one of the colleges at Cambridge University, and although Beryl Vane had advised reading greats, Anna stuck to her original idea to read Spanish and History of Art, which meant her qualifications would have to be that much higher. She would be up against stiff opposition from English students. Picking up Josephine's car at the airport, they had a lovely lunch given by Beryl at the Vanes' home in Cheltenham. She explained to Anna how best to conduct herself at the interview, and the next day they motored to Cambridge for the interview. In the event, Anna was not offered a place for all the reasons the Vanes suggested she might not. Later, after Terry and Anna had visited Bristol, Anna having an interview, she plumped for University College London. London offered not only a better hall of residence, but also the added excitement of the capital city, with all the premier museums and art galleries, which would be helpful when reading her subject. Terry and Josephine had picked a very difficult moment to think about selling. The equity markets were down, interest payments were high, and house sales stagnant, both in the UK and Spain. And this had not been the case the year before, when prices and interest rates were low and employment and growth figures up. In 1988, inflation rates rose from 4% to over 10% a year later. The following year, it rose to 15%. The property market was had doubled in house values in the previous 4 years, and now, towards the end of 1989, tumbled by 10%. Over the next 3 years, housing markets were in negative equity, caused by inflated mortgages. In 1990 and 91, Britain was in its deepest recession, with over 3 million unemployed. The Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd persuaded the Prime Minister John Major to join the ERM, which he did in October 1990. The Lawson boom was about to burst. Inflation was out of control. The Chancellor withdrew sterling from the European exchange rate mechanism in 1992, when there was a peaking of the mortgages. At the same time, many loans were in arrears, properties became repossessed, and this situation continued at a high rate for the following 4 years and peaked in 1991, and then only being relieved after government schemes were introduced to help borrowers. Terry and Josephine were locked into this awful property situation, which they were forced to deal with when they returned. Not only was the economy in Spain poor, but the economy in all other European countries was stagnant too. There were many English residents who were unhappy with the financial downturn to the Spanish economy, who were trying to sell their properties and return to England. There were thousands, all in the same boat, all making the same decisions at the same time, and into this maelstrom they plunged, Josephine and Terry planning a campaign to take them back to England. This was in the autumn of 1990, after Anna had gone back to school for her final year. They put the property in the hands of joint agents, a Gibraltarian company run by 2 women, who they thought would cover people coming to Gibraltar to look for Spanish properties, and Trevor Dine at Andalusia Properties to cover the passing trade in Spain. It could not have been a more difficult period, and even though they were old hands at buying and selling houses, this was not a time to be doing either. They made sure the photographs were as near perfect as could be, and the blurb in the sales brochure of the highest order. They circulated the brochures to every large business up and down the coast, and promoted the property in England in both magazines and newspapers. By March there were no takers, and the situation was beginning to look dire. Considering how best to advertise the place, they came up with the idea of a spring fair for the gallery, to market craft items from around the surrounding area, from Estepona to San Roque, in a means to put the property before the public. They immediately arranged to meet Mari at the restaurant, where the proposition was put to her. She called over her parents to ask their opinion. They were quite excited, especially that they would be involved, and the restaurant and publicised Casares to holiday makers and local residents. It was agreed that they would approach the mayor to get him on our side. At a meeting at the town hall, the whole assembly was packed together, taking up all the chairs from every room in the building. Jointly they asked for the town council's blessing to put on this fair, emphasised the benefit that would be received from the publicity by the posting of numerous pamphlets and stickers. Murray explained that there would be a luncheon laid on for all the visitors, and free food for the dignitaries, including newspapers and radio reporters. Speeches would be made and toasts given to the far-sightedness of the council. The mayor was most impressed and agreed to their proposals, accepting that the fair would promote local businesses and crafts, and with his blessing ringing in their ears, they departed to get on with the organisation. There were local potters, artists, dried flower arrangers, furniture makers and specialist sewing and bread and bead workers. There were tours of the garden to be arranged and drinks ordered, glasses hired. The date for the opening was decided there and then for the 1st of June. It took all that spring and early summer to get everything in place, making sure everyone concerned was fully committed. At this stage they were still advertising the property. All the special invitations were kept, and the steady stream of cars were signposted up the road to the restaurant. The guests had to then walk back, taking in the splendours of the fine views down the terraces into the valley. The gallery, newly decorated, had all the display items neatly arranged, and the visitor's book opened at the first page. Terry had worked unstintingly on the garden to make it perfect. On the day it tipped down with rain early on, making them fear for the opening. And as it turned out, the sun came out and the blue skies returned. The gallery was packed. Although it was well received and well attended, it didn't sell in many exhibits, and it certainly didn't produce a buyer for the property. 2 positive outcomes did come about, though. The town was promoted, and the restaurant did a roaring trade. Anna left San Jose after obtaining her baccalaureate, having had the acceptance from London University that she could study there. Now she knew where she was going, and could work out how long she had left in Spain. She had come to the conclusion a long time before that she was going to lead her own life when she had the opportunity. In September, Terry flew back to England with Anna to be met by Josephine at Gatwick Airport. And that week Terry took Anna to her hall of residence to see her settled in. This was the moment that Anna had craved for, to be on her own and fend for herself and make new friends, share new experiences, both of which would present difficult choices and even tougher decisions. At that very moment she came of age. Terry was pleased to pass her over, for life to shape her next development. He had done his best. The next day he flew back to Gibraltar, leaving both Anna and Josephine in England, and when arriving back in Gibraltar Airport he was arrested by armed airport police. An IRA bomber had threatened to blow up the airport, so they were naturally suspicious. Terry was questioned and searched, and eventually being given the all-clear. Ernie Soule picked him up to take him back to the house in Torre Guadiaro to find Liddy, his wife, setting up the table for them to all have a meal. They had been kind enough to look after Ruff in my absence. They wanted to know all the latest news, particularly about how my experiences at the airport. Terry left them at 6 in the evening to drive back to Casares. Josephine didn't fly back for another 5 weeks. The Magic of Spain agreed to take the property onto their books to rent out in several parts as holiday lets. It had taken many weeks to put the plan together to involve their head office. The company had sent out a survey team to take photographs, making a special feature of the swimming pool. Terry and Josephine had to pose for the camera, pointing out the fantastic views and the unique features, the olive oil presses and stone milling area. The team was suitably impressed and considered it a very desirable location. The next day, Terry heard the news that a buyer was on the horizon. Trevor Dine had introduced a Canadian to the property whilst he had been away. The Canadian had seen the property, then flown back to update his new young wife. He returned a few weeks later, and this time with his wife, to look at the property again and make an offer. He still had to arrange his finances, including the sale of his home in Canada. The agent told him the Magic of Spain has the property on their books, and the pottery is booked for the following year. This contributed greatly to the eventual sale. When Terry looks back, he will never forget the thrill and pride he felt owning such a place. The sheer beauty of the locality, the views of Africa, the twinkling lights of Ceuta at night, and the crisp mountain air, the shafts of penetrating sunlight searching out the shadows, and the tremendous thunderstorms which heralded another bout of torrential rain. Locked inside him will be the random stone paths traversed with Anna, taking them to the poolside during the midday break. Rough following along behind, all climbing up the steps to the tiled pools around. The playful fun, the unconscious sharing, such innocent moments never to be relived. The random path taking them back to the house, past the fig, the prickly pear and corob tree. For Anna to finish off her school homework, practice her Jane Fonda keep fit, whilst Terry got on with the dinner. That January, Josephine began to look around for something larger in Aylesbury, meaning to keep close to Helen and only a trade journey away from Anna, in a central position to service her clients. Josephine had found such a home. It was in Castle Street, called the Old House, subsequently enlarged in the 18th and 19th century. Being timber-framed with a projecting upper floor, had originally been a hall house. It was in a poor state of repair, needing a massive amount of work and money spending on it to remove all the forced partitions and cheap fittings. The local authority, planning department and English heritage were going to be frequent visitors. The removal van turned up in Spain. The men who had been there 3 years previously now prepared to load up again. Everything was export wrapped, ready to put into their warehouse, in store, whilst the old house was being returned to its original glory. When they had loaded the final piece, Terry walked the grounds for the last time, picturing all the hard work which had gone into making it such a delight. They loaded up the car, Ruff sitting in the front seat, as was usual, and saying goodbyes to the house, set off on their long journey back home. The house in Spain was shut up for the last time. He took the car and themselves back to England. They travelled back through Spain and France to catch the ferry at Calais, dropping Ruff off for the isolation kennels van at the ferry terminal. Terry had tried to get Josephine to agree to smuggle her home, so that Ruff would not have to suffer 6 months of isolation. However, Josephine wouldn't agree, thinking that they would be fined. If Ruff had been discovered, how ridiculous that was, and how stupid he was to take any notice. Josephine had to fly back to Spain on her own in late February to finalise the financial arrangements, transferring over the deed and receiving the money. The buyer was being very difficult, trying to extract the maximum from his position, but Josephine stuck to her guns and made the best of a very difficult job. The atmosphere between them was acrimonious. After a lot of haggling, a price was decided and a deal done. Josephine was adamant that what had been decided should be stuck to. The Mitsubishi Lancer was included in the deal as the final offer, as were the carpets, curtains, 3-piece suite, and many other unwanted articles. It was best to get rid of them there, included, for they didn't have enough space for them in England, or in some cases the need. Josephine had done a magnificent job clinching the deal.